The Steel Ball Run anime has finally arrived. A lot was changed, some stuff was added, but overall it might have just been the greatest episode of JoJo ever created. So let's break down this special 47-minute episode and go over all of the changes made from the manga and my overall thoughts on this adaptation as a longtime fan. The episode opens with this very beautiful and cinematic original scene that first gives credit to Hirohiko Araki, our GOAT, as the creator of the original work, and faithfully refers to this story as JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 7. Despite the title being listed as a completely separate show within the Netflix catalog, it doesn't do anything extra to explain the alternate universe or refer to any previous parts. So just like the original manga, they left a bit of mystery for those experiencing it for the first time. This new opening is accompanied by narration from Johnny Joestar and establishes the setting as the 19th century western frontier, and mentions how pioneers stormed the lands, conquered native people, and endured until they reached the Pacific. We then transition into a more familiar scene of Sandman being chased down by his tribe. So we already knew that they would be reworking these early chapters, and they said that the story would no longer begin with Sandman like the manga, so I was surprised to see this at all. But it is heavily cut down, and Sandman now just hides inside of a hole in the ground and looks at a newspaper with a Steel Ball Run race headline. But we still got to hear his tribe yelling that he had the white man's books in his tent. So if someone hasn't read the manga, you still get the impression that Sandman is being ostracized by his people and had an interest in the white man's culture and is going to use it to win the race for his people. But it is a bit less impactful having cut the chief, more of his tribesmen, us actually seeing the Bible in his tent, the scenes with his sister, and Gyro's training wall, which explains where he got the books and foreshadows the spin. But for the sake of pacing, this was pretty necessary. This episode needed to introduce 5 main characters with some level of backstory or reason for them to be in the race. And still, the race doesn't start until 23 minutes in, so just keep that in mind when I mention cuts. It's not that bad, and the way David Production transformed this early awkward stage was magic. And there still is the possibility that these scenes will appear in a later Sandman flashback to further develop the character. Also, all of the hints of Sandman's original stand have been removed, which is more of a correction than a cut, as early on it looked like he had this sand-based ability, but we never saw it again, so it makes sense to just remove it. We then arrive on San Diego Beach a few days before the race, and this entire scene of an associate voicing concerns to Steven about the unexpected turnout and how it could be a failure is cut, and replaced with us just seeing a lot of racers showing up, with one mentioning that the toilets are overflowing. And I'm honestly not surprised that they cut the line of Steven talking about Asian people eating the dogs and the French people walking around naked. We now see Johnny a bit earlier than in the manga in a new scene where he's looking towards the race admissions booth but hesitantly rolls away. And then we switch back to the press conference, which had a bunch of cut dialogue, mostly just inconsequential details about the race, but it's no longer mentioned by the reporter that Lucy Steele is 14 years old, which was kind of important to make us think differently of Steven at first, but then explain their relationship later on. In the next few scenes, we start to see how the production went about really reorganizing things to make the pacing have a more natural flow. For example, Steven now cries in Lucy's arms after the press conference instead of before it, and in the following scene, Gyro's introduction and duel get to play out in full, when in the manga, you had Poco Loco's introduction just thrown right in the middle of this scene, but now is moved to later in the episode after Poco Loco starts the race. So during Gyro's introduction, the episode starts to flex its muscles, and you can see the Part 5 team really shine through. A hallmark of their style is the extra line work in the hands and faces, and just so many great moments in this scene that give so much aura to Gyro, the effects of the spin calling back to Hamon, the new cross-hatching effect for shading, and the red and black color shift showing that Red Dead Redemption influence the director had recently talked about. We then get into Johnny's introduction, and I really forgot how much of a stubborn jerk he is at the start of the race, which just shows how much he's going to change throughout the story. And like in the manga, after meeting Gyro, it then leads into his backstory, where they made a pretty significant change and revealed that his brother Nicholas died in an accident, which wasn't mentioned in the manga until chapter 42. And overall, the visuals are very different, using the young Johnny design we didn't see until later, but still tell how he was once a prodigy horse racer that fell from grace and after becoming paralyzed was abandoned by his family. The anime adds a new scene right after this flashback that shows Johnny crawling into the admissions booth and gets his 939 racer number, when in the manga he raced the first stage without a number. When Gyro is watching Johnny try and ride Slow Dancer, he no longer has this small interaction with Sandman. Instead, we just see him arrive at the admissions booth and pays for his entry with an emerald, which is no longer covered in sand or mentioned to be a family heirloom. And at the start of the race, as expected, a lot of the opening ceremony was cut, like the mini horse march and the trophy frozen in ice. I know people love this horse march, but what even was this? Were they robots? And none of this was really relevant. I don't think we ever even saw the trophy again, so better to just start the race. And once we actually kick things off is when the true magic of this adaptation begins, and so much of this first stage is adjusted from the manga, so it would be pretty monotonous to just list every difference, but everything they did change you don't even really notice and was 100% for the better. And I really want to emphasize how well of a job David Production did in transforming the early stage of Steel Ball Run into this well-paced short film essentially, that uses its time to tell the original story in its own visual style, but also fully captures Part 7's overarching theme of motion, where once the race starts, it feels like we never slowed down until the finish line. Even the scenes I was most worried about, like the mid-race dialogue and the explanations, were executed perfectly. The camera angles and loops were dynamic and never felt stiff or repetitive, and were of course balanced out with tons of high-frame horse racing. So what the adaptation sacrificed in manga accuracy more than made up for what was lost by creating a fun, fast-paced horse race that evokes feelings of hope and storming the new frontier, which is the essence of Steel Ball Run. And going hand in hand with the animation, which I thought was some of the best in the series, is the music. They were not lying when they were hyping up this soundtrack. The rhythm of the themes that flow like water from one character to the next truly feels like you are dancing with Steel Ball Run, and further amplifies the theme of motion. It's like the episode just throws you on a saddle and brings you along for the ride. Some notable character themes were the upbeat groove of Poco Loco, with the theme even saying "Hey Ya," the name of his stand. And Diego's theme being like a remix of the original Universe Dio's was very nostalgic. And I love the audio boom sound effect they used, similar to Time Stop that happened whenever Diego had made a burst or taken the lead, not only referencing his speed being similar to Time Stop, but also some very early foreshadowing. So by the end of the first stage, one of the biggest changes you might have noticed, if you read the manga, was the decision to not show any stands this episode, and overall undermined the supernatural aspect of the series besides the mystery of the spin. So originally you had Sandman show a ghost arm, and Poco Loco's stand physically appeared a whole bunch throughout the first stage, and gave the impression that this stand ability was making him lucky. When in the anime, you only hear it talk a little bit, just hinting at something, but you never see it. So first-time watchers might assume his luck or confidence is coming from the fortune teller. So this could have been simply to save time, but I think they really wanted to immerse the viewers in the competition of the race and keep the start as grounded as possible, which I think worked out in the end. And honestly, Poco Loco gets so much attention this episode, he almost feels like the main character. So also showing his stand might have tipped the balance a little bit too much towards him, because it felt like they tried to give everyone a similar amount of screen time, to make the main five feel as competitive as possible, to where it felt like any of them could be the winner. So same reason as to why Sandman had the cut content. I think they were just trying to keep the racers balanced while making it clear that Johnny Joestar is our protagonist, despite him not doing much in the first stage. But Poco Loco was just my favorite this episode. He was the star. So cherries on top for this special premiere. The animation team has finally seemed to strike a balance with their use of 3D, and it looks like it's going to be great for the future of this adaptation, finally having learned more techniques to make it blend super well with the 2D, and was barely noticeable when used. And the voice cast for the Japanese and English were both fantastic. Those were the only two languages I watched so far, but all of the characters felt like, you know, their voices when I was reading them. Gyro's a little bit more soft-spoken, Johnny's aggressive, Poco Loco's fun, and Sandman is more determined, and Diego's like super arrogant. Just perfect casting all around for that. Although I might also watch in French because it's funny. So when is episode 2 dropping? There are so many rumors going around between the weekly and batches, but right now, guys, the honest truth is that we just don't know. So I'll let you guys know when Steel Ball Run is coming back as soon as possible. So let me know what you guys thought about this first episode. Drop a like, subscribe for more, and I'll talk to you guys real soon. Thank you for watching.